Beer is proof that God loves us and wants us to be happy.
Welcome back to the Go to Hell podcast. Strong opinions weekly held about Christianity, pop culture, and beer. I'm your host, Tim Curley, and I'm joined by my co-host, Colton Pierce. This is part 4 of Politics and Christianity. We are skipping How Are You Doing? Colton, what are we drinking?
Yeah, we're still here on this Saturday morning. We're still watching college football. It's Baylor and Utah now. I don't know if we actually turned it on to this or if it's just highlights.
No, this is a new, we switched.
Okay. We are drinking Moontime from Morgan Territory Brewing Company. It's a hazy IPA. Its hops blend is Citra, Mosaic, Lotus. It's a pint, 16 fluid ounces.
I'm sure I've probably had Lotus before. It's the first time I've noticed Lotus.
It has a 45 IBU and is a 6.9% alcohol by volume. If you don't know what IBU is, that's your International Bitters Units. And so the higher IBU, the more bitter it tastes. Which this is pretty high for hazy, honestly. 45? Is that? I don't know. I haven't really sipped it yet. But. And yeah, actually, that's pretty bitter for a hazy IPA.
It's like a bitter orange Julius.
Yeah, it's
actually pretty good for a hazy.
Yeah,
which I'm not surprised. I think this is the second Morgan Territory we've had, and they've both been really good. I need to buy more of these.
Yeah,
I don't remember where I got this. I think so. I was down in LA. 2 weeks ago. Was it 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks? No, 3 weeks ago.
Did you get some tacos in LA?
Oh, I had to get tacos in LA.
They have like the best hikes and the best tacos in LA.
Absolutely. They also have the best beer selection in LA, or at least by Jamie's house.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
did you go to Dudes? You got to go to Dudes.
We didn't. We were so worn out by what we were doing every day that we walked down to Whole Foods.
Paid $75
No, I figured it out. No, this time around.
Did you get a sandwich?
No, I knew what I was in for. So the first day I was there, they had fairly decent Indian food in the hot area. It was like tandoori chicken or tikka masala and lemon rice.
Yeah.
Just got a little bit of that. Next night, I ate from the salad bar and just had a salad, and then the third night, same thing, the Indian food, and they had some chicken wings.
I can't believe you didn't just go order food on the side. Again, I ordered a sandwich and it was $12. You got, I was like freaking.
Well, I paid $12 for my food each time, so it wasn't bad. I think we were so starving that night that everyone just kind of went crazy, and then it just ended up being.
Well,
ridiculous.
We didn't know that they were charging by weight.
Oh yeah.
And it was like charging by weight.
But the beer selection was. Oh, in fact, we didn't do this last episode, so we'll do it now. Since it got brought up. So we would eat in the bar. Apparently, the first night we were there, the cantina was closed. So we took it as there's no more cantina. You have to eat out in the food court.
Oh, okay.
Second night we were there, I was like, maybe it's open. Third night was there. No, they're definitely open. We could have gotten just fish tacos. So,
dang.
While I'm looking for this, in the cooler though of the Whole Foods grocery store, the beer selection was amazing.
Yeah, I bet.
So I came home. I think this is where I got the Morgan Territory for sure. I got the Harlan.
Oh, nice.
On another day, I went to a Vons, which is just as close as really the Whole Foods, but down Vons. A different street.
Yeah.
Beer selection, again, it had less of the 4-packs of the micro.
Oh, yeah.
They did have some, which I brought home. But they had everything in 12 and 18 packs and 6-packs. They had all of the Ballast Point IPAs, all of them.
Nice.
They even had a 18-pack where you could get, a 16-pack where you could get 4 of each.
Yeah.
They had the pineapple one. That's where I got the mackerel pale ale, which is very hard to find. So anyway, it's a beer haven near Jamie. It's a good thing he doesn't drink because he'd just be an alcoholic. I'd be a wreck if I lived down there. What am I looking for? Photos. So, we were there, like I said, 3 nights in a row at this Whole Foods that had a bar inside. So over the 3 nights there, I drank the Beechwood Amalgamator IPA. Beechwood's from Huntington Beach, California. The Abnormal Beer Secret Safari Pale Ale from San Diego. The Paperback Bunny with a Chainsaw IPA from Glendale, California. The Browerage West Bounce IPA out of San Pedro, San Pedro, California. That's how they say it. They don't say San Pedro. And then I had the Ghost Town in Hume IPA out of Oakland, and what we drank in the first episode, the Harland. No, I had a Harland Hazy IPA. We had the regular IPA, West Coast IPA, in the previous episode. So that was pretty much all of the IPAs that they had on tap. And they were all delicious. I think there was one, I don't remember which one it was. I'm like, that one's all right, but it's pretty good. Not something you expect at Whole Foods. No, but I think there's one in San Jose that's like that as well. It's actually has not a bar inside, but an actual brewery in the Whole Foods. So anyway.
Hey, also
Morgan Territory, you seem to be doing it really well.
I wanted to read this to you. I wanted to read you this.
We need to stop there. They're in Tracy, so we need to stop on the way on one of our trips north.
So based off of what you told me last night, did some research, and so I wanted to read you this.
Oh, Ballast Point.
Yeah.
I was told this by our brewmaster at Korea.
So they shut down production at the Miramar location and the Little Italy location. But here's what they said. They said, we've secured a contract with another company to oversee the Miramar Brewery in the interim. They will handle production to supply our tap rooms. So both Miramar and Little Italy are staying open. They're still serving beer and all that kind of stuff. They're just not producing out of there anymore. And so they've contracted out. They will handle production to supply our tap rooms and distributors as we look to establish a new facility in San Diego, ideally with an 80 to 100 barrel brew house. So
they're letting those go in order to
our goal is to
they're leasing them so they can make some cash in order to find one big ass location, probably like what Stone has,
like Windsor has, or the Windsor location of. So our goal is to restore Ballast Point as a premier West Coast brand. So they're definitely.
Sounds like they got overextended with
it's not like they're dialing down, because they're also looking to expand tap rooms to other places right now. It doesn't seem like they're dialing down. They're just dialing a little down from San Diego to then put a really big one is kind of what it seems like, where it's like, okay, we're gonna have a spot like what Stone has in Escondido.
Yeah.
We're gonna have this venue kind of thing. So, or Windsor for Russian River. In Windsor. So
that'd actually be better, because the Little Italy one's nice, but it's not big.
It's a tap room.
It's just a little tap room.
Yeah,
they need a big ass.
Yeah, and I love. I like that Little Italy tap room a lot. Like, although
don't get me wrong, it's great because particularly from where we stayed the last time. But I also wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind an Escondido location or the Liberty Station location that Stone has.
Although the one that I love the most of Ballast Point, I love their one that's right next to USD. Because that one is also a hop shop. So Ballast Point is really about, not only are they
They have one next to USC?
USD.
Oh, USD. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and so that one is awesome because, again, half of the store is just brewery buying and, like, go in there, buy your hops, go buy your yeast, all that kind of stuff. And they have, like, kits for you to learn how to make their beers. They give you the recipes to their beers.
Yeah, it's like Sierra Nevada.
It's so cool. Like, I'm like, that's awesome. And it's half that and it's half a brewery. And it's literally like, if you've been to it, it's like in a strip mall. Like, it's just a strip mall spot, Ballast Point. And it's so awesome. I just love the fact that they are really excited about trying to get other people to learn how to make beer. Ballast Point also they teach people how to make beer once a month. They do a brewery class. And they just open it up to the public, and people are able to go in there and learn how to make beer. And that's so cool. I think that's awesome. I love the industry, the beer making industry that's down there. It's a really cool aspect. So last night I was a little concerned.
Well,
when you
Brian
brought
did
that
make it
to
sound
me.
like they weren't doing too well, which both Eric and I and Nolan said, how's that possible? Their beer's everywhere, so...
Yeah, and from what it looks like is that it's... And even the rest of the article kind of talked about... And apparently this has been since April. April was when they really outsourced it, and it looks like it's a growth move rather than a dial back move kind of thing. So really cool to see. Yeah, I love Ballast Point. So,
So I guess for those of you who listen to the podcast, you like the beer talk. We didn't share the backstory. I was told yesterday that Ballast Point had sold all of its locations, was outsourcing its production of its beer to other people, and the only place it was still brewing and the only location still open was the downtown Disney location. So that had us in freak out mode.
yeah, that would have been tragic. I feel that would have been worse than Racer 5 shutting down or
Oh,
Beer
absolutely.
Republic. I would have been like, what? No way. It's not as bad. No, I wouldn't say it's like Lagunitas closing its doors, but it's like Stone closing its doors.
Oh, it would be like Stone closing for sure.
Yeah, I'd be
I would
like,
even say Firestone closing. Like, even though I don't like Firestone's not up there with Ballast Point, that still would be like epic.
And it would be shocking to me because I feel like that represents a huge part of where maybe I'm just like, maybe the IPA game is really that much out of touch, but you go to Ballast Point, I went there on weeknights when I was there with Alec, and it was packed.
Yeah.
I was like, you're still waiting in line for beers. And so I'm like, how? And that shit flies off the shelf, it feels like. And they said that they are focusing more on distributing. They're trying to get everything back out there again like they used to about a decade ago, where they were putting out beers all the time where it's like you can find them everywhere. Because right now it's
hard to find.
It's hard to find, and when you find it, you better buy it. Like, it's harder to find Ballast Point now than it is to find Russian River in our area.
Yeah.
Emphasis
No,
on
it
our
is.
area.
It
Yeah.
is. It's strange.
Yeah.
So I'll be in LA for probably 2 weeks. So yeah, I'll probably go to that Vaughn's while I'm there and
Well, and you have
buy all of the
and we have a
Ballast Point that they have.
We have a Ballast Point in the fridge right now. We're gonna do a pale ale tasting. We're not doing it on the podcast though, right? Or are we doing it on the podcast?
I don't know. I feel like if we do it on the podcast, it needs to be what are we on? We're on episode. That's a good time to bring it up. This will be episode 97. This is 97. So in 3 episodes, if you're listening to this, you're like, whoa, you guys are way past 97. 97 in full episodes. I am not counting all the 2 months or so where we broke things up into 3 episodes where it was by little segments.
100 recordings.
actual full episodes. This will be our 100th episode. Will be in a couple weeks, so we could either save the
pale ale tasting for
the
them.
pale ale tasting when we plan on having Andy and Nolan and anybody else who wants to join us, probably Alec, and do it then, or we'll just do it for ourselves. Halloween party or something.
Yeah, something like that. I was like, again, we don't know what our recording schedule is going to look like. Tim and I will talk after the podcast and just kind of talk about what our weeks are looking like. I've got tournaments coming up. He's got lots of other fun stuff, more fun than tournaments coming
You
up.
sons of bitches who listen to this thing paid for it. We might be able to actually go out of our way to record, but that's okay. Just kidding. Just kidding. It's a passion project. It is a passion project. I love our passion project. Just to be perfectly honest with everyone listening, neither one of us have any idea how many people listen. I think the last time I looked was a year and a half ago because I just don't
know
care.
when the last time I looked. You know what? Now that you say that, I'm going to go on to Podbean. I'm going to look.
Well, Podbean's not the only one.
I know, but at least I can know a little bit there. Right, Podbean.
So
continuing on with our topic. Actually, wait, did you want to go my route or did you want to go your route?
No, let's go your route first, and then we'll see where we go from there.
Okay. So
we have a book we want to talk about.
We do.
We could talk about it, but I kind of want maybe in the break that we take, I'll let Colton take a look at it, so he's got actually read it a little bit. I was going to spoon feed some information. We can talk about it, but I think it'd be better if you're a little bit prepped.
Just as long as you make the airplane noises. Yeah. So our last episode. So we're breaking this up into 2 episodes. So when I say the last episode, I mean I'm looking at her Podbean. Apple Music's top 100 albums, 24 downloads. 25 downloads, 24 downloads. That's honestly, that's a lot more people than I thought that were already listening to this. So I thought it was like 4 people. So I was like, cool. Then I was like, shout out to the 24 of you that downloaded this.
Thanks, Curtis.
Yeah, thanks, Curtis. Super listener Curtis over there. Our last episode, we kind of talked about foreign policy a little bit and kind of what do we feel like God's response is. And I don't feel like it was, I don't think it was a negative conversation. I think it's a conversation that we've had lots of times on here. But let's get to politics within our own home country, because I think that's a real focal point. I think it's something that's important to me, foreign policy, because.
Can I just? I want to put a bow on the last episode, which I probably should have done 20 minutes ago, but this just occurred to me. I think what you and I are trying to be is voices in the wilderness that are not being heard, and when they are, they're being shouted down as anti-Semitic or whatever. It's some bad thing to say. Can someone step up and say, this isn't the answer, or maybe there's a better way?
Yeah, 100%.
And it's not, you and I feel convicted, but we're not saying those who disagree with us are wrong. They're going to hell. They're not Christians. We, in fact, understand that worldview. That worldview makes sense logically from a human perspective. If you just go
100%.
through history, those who roll up in a ball I get it. Jesus, the world Jesus lives in, asks us to live in, is antithetical to how the world works. But some of us, hopefully more of us, need to step up and say, there's got to be a better way. And maybe this way that we've been working, the reason why it's not working or it just keeps leading to the same cycle of violence is because we just need to stop using violence.
Yeah.
And one more thing, and then we'll get to the economics.
I didn't
The
even say
one
we were gonna
hard
talk about
thing that
economics.
you and I have to, that is the counter to us, or the hard thing. It's the hard thing to deal with.
Yeah.
Is the thing that we don't, is that world we don't swim in, that it's the demonic world that does exist, I believe, in this world. How does being a Jesus follower, how do you deal with that when you're dealing with a demonic force that's taken over someone or some group of people or something like that? Like they've been captured by evil. How do we deal with it? And I don't want to
I don't
go in a
actually
long
like you saying the
discussion
word
about that.
evil.
I think that's a whole other episode, but that's where I feel like that's the hard part.
I don't like you saying the word evil. I wish that you would change that to the enemy, please.
I hate that. Yeah. No. I don't like that. I'm not going to use the word evil. Well, I'm going to use the word evil, but I mispronounced it because we now live in a world that's post Lord of the Rings and
Sauron.
Game of Thrones. So it's got to be. I mispronounced it. We live in a world of evil.
Yeah, there we go. I don't even know if that's I don't know if that's Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones. I feel like that's more Princess Bride. Marriage is what holds us together.
But I think that's the pushback from the personal pacifism of what do I do when a guy is banging down my door and he looks like he's been demon possessed, and I get it, and that's the struggle. I don't have an answer to that. So, and sometimes I think that's where we have to be honest as Christians. And what gets Christians into trouble is we try to apply these just across the board rules, and it's got to be this hard and fast rule instead of saying, no, this is what we're striving for, this is what we're pushing for, and if more of us were better at trying to be peacemakers, that would be better. But we do understand there are these things that challenge this worldview and make it really difficult to be a peacemaker and a pacifist.
Yeah. Well, and I think, there are lots of things that make that difficult. And so, I think that Tim's right in sitting there and saying that, we're not by any means trying to make it seem like you can just flip a switch and this is easy peasy lemon squeezy. I just don't think it's been talked about for a long time. And
yes, it's just having the discussion and feeling like, I'm going to say it. Why can't peace work in the middle? Why can't we talk about peace between Israel and Palestine?
Yeah, exactly.
Why can't we talk about peace between Ukraine and Russia and not be called a Putin lover?
Yeah, and it's okay. It's okay sitting there and saying, it's okay to question those things, and because don't just sit there and just accept it that it's a fact, and don't do the whole recognize that we are a part of a broken world, but then go out and try and fix it. But try and fix it. Don't put your
don't put lipstick on a pig,
right? Or don't go out there and do what you want the world to look like, right? We're a part of a collective. We're a part of a group. And also, this is where we're going to get to the politics bit. And I'm not saying that we all have to get on the same page. I don't know. And I'm just not going to say that because that's even more impossible than peace in the Middle East. But I am saying is that if we can agree on that this is something that we want, and we can start pushing for that and helping our world improve, then we can make that happen. But we have to be aggressive about it. And aggressive is meaning like we have to attack it and work towards it.
No, don't use war terms. Don't use war terms.
Okay. We have to. 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 We have to I'm trying to think of a word for this. It's hard when you're a beer and a half in and you didn't have breakfast this morning. We have to.
No, just stick with the tech. We have to be open.
Yeah, I
we
know.
have to be.
It'll just take too much airtime. I was like, it'll make our 2-hour episode 2 hours and 2 minutes.
This is how war has taken over. War and sports have just merged.
Well, that was my
taken
thing.
over
Is I was
everything.
like, I didn't even view it.
No,
like,
as soon as you said, I was like, it's because you're a coach, and so
yeah,
everything's
exactly. I was like,
attack.
we gotta attack this. We gotta do it. Well, and what's so funny is there was when I was teaching at Tulare Western, I had an 8th period English class my first year there, and at Tulare Western, if you're involved in sports, you don't have an 8th period. You have 8th period athletics. So I would have that 8th period class, and it was the hardest class of my life because all of my analogies that I ever use, like 75% of them are sports related. And the kids, and I would say it and literally just like blank stares. And I was like, do we understand this? And they're like, so what's a soccer ball again? Like, I don't, and I was like, fuck. All those kids are failing PE, like they're none of them. And I was like, damn it. Okay.
Can you apply this to C++ language?
Yeah, literally. Well, it's not, I was like, okay. All right, so you're watching an anime, right? And all of a sudden, they're all paying attention. They're like, oh, yeah, I was watching an anime last night, Mr. Pierce. They're like, okay, all right. It's an interesting group, 8th period and Tulare. So it's just funny that I can't find language for it, but it's like I use coach language, I use sports language all the time, and so I'm like, oh man, I don't know. But yes, we have to be, you have to be aggressive. Although, I'm going to finish this and then I'll say another thing. We have to be aggressive towards, helping our world change. And that doesn't mean we're being aggressive with other people. It just means that we have to go and make changes in our world. I was like, we can't just sit there and just be lazy and just be like, well, it'll figure itself out or whatever. It's like, no, we have to be advocates for change. And that doesn't mean going to a college campus and putting up a tent. It's again kind of what we've talked about. It's those baby steps. I believe that baby steps are the way to look at it. It's taking care of the needs that you see in front of you goes so much further. And I believe that that's how politics works in this country. Is if you take care of the needs that are in front of you, but you don't. The hard part is that we get so distracted by the big stuff in our country. And I feel like this is going to be for another episode. Not the episode we have right now.
I mean,
maybe. We'll see. But I'm saying that if we take care of the needs that are in front of us right now, as opposed to just going all the way out there, then again, I don't think that, and maybe it's because of American culture, or maybe it's just worldly culture, where we believe that we have to be the next Martin Luther King Jr., or we have to be the next Mahatma Gandhi, or we have to be whatever. We don't want to just be ripples in the pond. Like, we want to be huge waves of whatever. But yet the ripples allow for huge waves to happen. If we just go out there and we just do something, you don't know about how many lives you influence in the way that you talk about things, the way that you address things, the way that you talk to other people can change the way that they perceive the world moving forward. And that's the whole part about teachers. When you're sitting there and you're saying, I don't want my teachers to be talking about certain subjects with my students in school. The reason why is because that is an adult that has a significant influence over that person's life, and you don't even realize it. When I'm telling you at the beginning of the last podcast where teenagers are coming up and telling me their whole drama, the only reason why they're telling me their whole drama is because they believe that I am invested in their life. And so if there is some advice that I ever give them or anything like that, they take that And now I have had an influence in their life to where they shape the way that they view a certain concept. And it may have been something that I didn't even completely intend for them to take from me. But because I'm an adult that's not their parent, that is speaking to them in a time where they feel vulnerable or they feel like they are exposing something about themselves, they therefore are then going to take that, and that will shape the way that they view the world for the rest of their life. It's a weird, and I'm not sitting there saying like teachers are any adult, but when we establish those relationships, you are influencing those, and you may not even know it moving forward. And so that's really tough. And with our politics, the way that it is, you know, we focus so big picture the entire time. We just go for, and just look at presidential elections. So many more people go out for presidential elections than local elections all the time. And so through that process, but who actually has the most influence over what it is that happens in your community? It's the local elections. And I think Tim's kind of gotten to that as to what he's going to vote for this year. You did disclose that, didn't you, on the podcast?
Oh, that I wasn't going to vote for either.
Oh, well, that you weren't going to vote for a president. You were just
Yeah.
like, all right, I'm going to vote for the things I'm. I think you said I'm going to.
Yeah,
vote for the
and
things that
that's
matter
one of the
most.
things I gave. I'm glad you brought this up, because when I did my political journey episode three episodes ago or whatever, and I talked a lot about conservatism and libertarianism. But what I didn't talk about, which I think is equally important in my worldview, if not, frankly, more important, is my belief in how this country was set up, which is this federalism idea, where we have local, state, and federal government. And since the Great Depression, the model's been shifted to where the federal government dominates everything, and I don't think it's a bad thing. We need to get back to where everyone's being governed by their local government, and they're comfortable with that. And what we've turned into is a bunch of nosy Parkers who want to insist that everybody in their, not only in their local city or local county, but their state and the country have to believe everything they believe when it comes to abortion or whatever, tax policy. And we would get along a lot better if just Texas got to be Texas, California got to be California, etc. And if you live in one of those states and that state's red and you're not red, that's your problem. Learn how to deal with it. I live in a state that's very deeply blue. I deal with it. Moving is not on my list of things to do. It's not like it's not come up. It's come up several times. Do you want to move? And it's been quickly dealt with as a firm no, by not just by me. I don't want. My wife and I discussed it. It wasn't like one of us said we want to move and the other said no. We both said no, we're not going to move. Why? Because my relationships are more important.
Right.
And do I know how to build relationships? Yes. Could I move somewhere else where my tax basis is better and blah, 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 blah? Yeah. Yes. But that's also, do I have friendships with people around the country that I've built over years? Yeah. And I've moved away from those people, and those relationships I've still maintained. But that doesn't mean that relationships should be taken lightly and you build new ones elsewhere.
Yeah.
Because you know what? You might move somewhere else and you don't have relationships that are as deep as what you've left. My parents moved around all around the country. They always had friends. His closest friends were people he knew in his 20s and 30s, and he kept up with them. So, all that to say, that getting back to what I was talking about, yeah, we need to go back to where states are running states. We're not imposing everything from a national level, whether it be tax policy or whatever, and let just different parts of the country operate how they want. And when they do something you don't like, it's not Texas's business to say, hey, Michigan, you're whacked out and crazy. Just like, you be you, baby. You be you. Because guess what? Michigan has a completely different climate than you have. Maybe their policy is informed because it's colder and they need to spend more money on roads because roads get torn up by snow more. I mean, that's the thing. We don't even think at that level. Like, you're like a completely different area in a lot of ways. You talk differently, you eat different foods. It's great that we've become this unified country and we think we're all Americans. We are, in a lot of ways. We're unified in some very big general ways around America and freedom and blah, 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 blah. You start going down, very quickly we have different ideas about things. And a lot of that just comes down to where we live. We have a lot of times geography and weather and other things lead to different worldviews, even though we're common Americans. We tend to be an ignorant people, if we're being honest. So, you'll see it all the time. Well, Germany has this level of crime and whatever. Germany is a small country compared to ours. We are one of the largest countries in the world. We have unique problems that only Canada. No, Canada doesn't count though, because Canada is larger than us, but has a minuscule population that's pretty much all along the border.
And significantly less. They're also homogeneous.
They're homogeneous. Brazil's similar, but also very different because they got a big, Anyway, there's only so many countries that are the same size, but even they're different, even though they're the same size. So, we were a better country before. There's a good argument to be made that the Civil War is where we finally became a nation. Before the Civil War, when you had men from the South and men from the North coming together, and like men from Minnesota going down to Tennessee and fighting in the midst of all this killing and this mayhem, they're also experiencing this country that they didn't know existed, even though they literally live in this country. Before the Civil War, it's argued that it was emphasized that it was the United States of America, and after the Civil War, became much more United States of America. So it was much more. We need to go back to understanding, letting people be governed by people that are like them. One, because I think it'll eliminate the tension. But two, to your point, and what you were bringing this up for, it's easy to get really riled up and say, we need to do something about children and education. When you're talking about kids in New York, you don't really care.
Yeah.
When they're kids in your town, well, I'll bring this up. This came up yesterday. One of the big divides in the country the last 30 years or so is immigration's been a big divide.
Yeah.
You've had a lot of people on the one side who are pro-immigration, and quite frankly, they're pro-immigration because they don't have to deal with consequences of it. Before I get into this, I'm just laying it out as academically neutral as I can. I'm not making judgments, so don't get your knickers in a wad when I say something you assume I'm making a judgment. But it is fair to say people who weren't dealing with a lot of the consequences of immigration were for it. People in states like California and Texas and Arizona who were dealing with it came across as much more anti-immigration. It became very fashionable for people who were pro-immigration to demonize those as being racist, those who wanted maybe a little more sensible immigration policy. Things flipped this year in August when kids went so all the last year and a half, but particularly this year, a lot of, I'll be nice, I'll call them migrants, were coming into the country. They were getting shipped around the country, and a lot of them got sent to New York City. When it came time for people to go back to school in New York City, the parents in New York City school districts had a shock because all of a sudden their schools were overrun with their classrooms were overrun with kids, not only who spoke all kinds of languages they'd never heard of, but two, those kids couldn't even read and write in those languages, let alone English.
Right.
To which everyone in California said, hey, welcome to our world the last 20 years.
Yeah.
This is why we're not racist. We're just pointing out there's problems when we have these things introduced into a system that is not equipped to handle it. And it might be one reason why education for our own citizen children is dropping.
Yeah.
Because we've got all these distractions, and at the same time, we're going out of our way to destroy the family and everything that it's supposed to provide, which is actually the bulk of the education, not what's done for 6 hours in classrooms.
Right.
And now all this stuff is coming to a head. And so again, these regions that never had to deal with immigration are now finding like, oh, okay, now I know what it means to be a border state. Now, a lot of, the politicians aren't thinking that way, but I think a lot of voters are like, okay, now I get it why I see cranky people in Texas upset because their emergency rooms are overrun by people who don't speak English and don't seem to be citizens. Like, hey, why can't I get in the emergency room? Well, we're overwhelmed because we've had an influx of 10,000 people coming into town in a year. Towns aren't equipped to deal with that.
Right.
Most places, city, states, and governments, as inept as they are, generally speaking, have an idea of what growth is based on birth rates. And they plan out income and spending based on what's the growth rate or what's the immigration I and immigration E of influx, outflux. What are we doing? So in our town of Tulare, we seem to be growing the last 2-3 decades. Last 10, 15 years, we've seen growing about 5,000 about every 10 years.
Yeah.
I think the city knows that. That means we got to plan for we need to plan for a new high school, new this, new that, new fire station. We need to hire more police, blah, 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 blah. You throw out of nowhere new people from another country that you didn't plan on, that's outside the birth rate or the normal immigration with an E rate. Shut up, Siri.
I couldn't find Tim's iPhone, but you can ask me again from there.
Thanks, Siri. Shut up. Anyway.
There's nothing to stop here.
She had to have the last word.
She's giving you sass, bro.
I have the last word here.
She said, fuck you.
Anyway.
Let me translate for you what Siri just said.
Anyway, that was a long rambling thing of we need to get back to more local stuff to where you're going with this discussion.
Yeah. Well, and so, actually, so earlier, if you heard me laughing because I was saying that there's things that I can't say, I was like, nowadays I have to use the word conscientious, because
Okay.
there's a TikTok trend that's going around right now, where people are saying that's very mindful, that's very demure. And so like lots of kids so I tell my water polo players, I'm like, you need to be mindful of this, and they're like, do we need to be very demure of that Pearson? I'm like, shut the fuck up. This is a halftime discussion. We're down by 5 and you want to be making fucking demure jokes right now. It's great. I don't tell my kids to shut the fuck up, but it's I'm like, golly, what are you doing? So be very conscientious about, what's going on around you. And I think that everybody wants to be more involved in what's going on elsewhere rather than what's going on right in front of you. And it's so crazy because that's the stuff that you can legitimately change on a regular basis. Not only is politics something that you're meant to get involved in, which a lot of us don't, right? Like we vote and we don't get involved in politics. We're like, so we need somebody that'll do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, okay, well, who's that? Like you should view that the same way that you view a church in some ways. Where it's like, okay, we need this person for this, but yet you choose to not get involved in it. Okay, well, we need this. We want somebody that checks this box, this box, this box, this box, this box, this box, this box for us. But yet that person doesn't seem to be coming around for you, and you want to complain about whoever it is that that's coming out. And so, but yet you don't get involved in something that you can legitimately change. It's just crazy. Remember, our government works based around your participation. You all are a participant. Whether you like it or not, you are able to, but yet we only want to exercise our voice on, we just want to go to like rallies or whatever or go stand on a corner, but you don't want to go to town hall meetings. You don't want to go to school board meetings. You don't want to go to all that stuff, which that is where the shit happens. I've been at those meetings where people want the change done. They go up there and they present their stuff, and yet there's nobody there to back them up. And so, but yet they're there on street corners. And so that's kind of one of those things where it's, again, we're missing the plot. But yet those same people that won't back those people that'll stand on street corners or whatever, they'll toss a freaking sign in their yard and they'll fight their neighbors in conversations about who to vote for president.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you're right. We need to be much more locally minded, civically minded. We need to turn away from this president of the United States is going to solve our problem, like he's some king. Like Washington's going to solve our problem, where they do some, again, one-size-fits-all issue that's supposed to work in Central Valley, California, let alone Escondido, California, or Crescent City, California, or Minneapolis or Jackson, Mississippi. We get frustrated with the federal government, and a lot of that's because we expect it to do things it's not capable of. Now, I will say there's a lot of this is just broken culture too. Again, I don't mean to sound unpatriotic, but I'm kind of over the United States is the greatest country on the planet. If we are, then the whole rest of the planet's really screwed. I mean, there's certainly some greatness here, but we really need to have a conversation about where we're broken and get serious about it. Yeah, and one of those things.
Well, and not from there's not great things here.
No, it's not that we're.
It's just if this is the greatest, that's sad.
It's because we've got big problems,
right?
and yet we want to go around telling everybody else to shut the hell up and do what we tell them to do. And I kind of, I understand why there's countries, not Iran and some of these really bad actors, but a lot of countries like, who are you telling to go, how to run their show? Like, you guys have your own problems. And I think we need to get really serious about our problems. And one of those is, you know what? Our work culture is broken. And I say that from, yes, a Christian perspective, but you don't have to be a Christian or religious of any kind to say that. Our work culture is broken. We work too hard, too much.
Yeah.
We need a reset where business does not, business or even the public sector in a lot of cases, teachers are not expected to work as much as they're expected to work.
Yeah.
So that one, we don't have excuses for being distracted at home, because I think a lot of people correctly can say, you want me to take care of this at home when I'm working X amount of time and I got an hour drive to get home to the house that I can afford because I can't afford to live where I work. And those aren't excuses. Those are problems we've created in America that, look, I don't know how to solve them. I don't know the government can solve them, but let's at least start having conversations about it so that, yeah, businesses say, let's figure out a way to put our office where the people who are working for us work, not where we want to be. Let's try to be more efficient and get work done in a shorter amount of time so that people have work at home.
Yeah.
Can go to home and spend time with their family. And now, taking this to your point, they have time to be civically minded, whether it be they join the Chamber of Commerce or what's the women's club in here that's got the funny name?
I know what you're talking about, but I don't know.
It's an absurd name. Or go to your city council meeting so you can just sit there and know what your local government's doing. I did that for about 3 years, because we had a homeless problem, and I wanted to see how our local government was going to deal with it, and we had a police department problem, and our city council didn't want to seem to deal with it, and we had a police chief who had been put on leave, paid leave, but they were accusing him of terrible things. And after like 2 years had not dealt with it, and it wasn't on anybody's schedule to deal with it. And it just seemed like the worst bit of government malfeasance that there was of, okay, why are we paying this guy? And it turned out to be a bunch of nonsense. Anyway, yeah, let's have it so people have more time to be engaged with their local government.
Yeah.
Because right now we have it where everyone's it's outsource it to the orange angry guy.
Yeah.
He'll fix it. No.
Well, and so from that, let's get into our main topic tonight, or this afternoon. For this episode, we talked about foreign policy, but I think that this is actually a really difficult topic for Christians, because I think that there is an outline in the Bible, but I feel like foreign policy is something that's scripturally very easy to grasp. I don't think it's easy to apply. I think that the lesson that they're that what Jesus is looking for is very easy to understand, that this is what Jesus is asking you, as compared to what it is that we're talking about now in politics.
It's funny. You say that. I think foreign policy is the realm where we had our episode where we talked about, can a Christian be president of the United States? But anyway, that's a whole side
No,
thing.
but so I think that it's I think when I say grasp is, I think you can sit there and recognize that, yeah, that's that's what Jesus is asking me to do. I just don't know if I can follow it. I think that's just what a lot of people, what a lot of people's response is. And so I feel like it's really cut and dry there.
Can I just interject one very strange, completely off the wall fact before we get into our economics?
Honestly, I'm intrigued at this point. So,
well, this will be the bow we put on foreign policy. I can't remember if it was Nagasaki or what was the other city we nuked. I think it was Nagasaki. We bombed Nagasaki and we bombed. Damn it.
I was like, Hiroshima?
Hiroshima.
Oh, okay. I was like, Hiroshima and Nagasaki are the two places that we bombed.
I believe it was Nagasaki. One of those two towns, cities, was the Christian center of Japan. There was a Christian community in Japan.
Wow.
And the Christian community in Japan was in one of those two cities that we fucking nuked.
Wow, that's crazy. That's tragic.
It's one of those wild, like, I don't know what to call it. It's just one of those. It's one of those things you read in history where you're like, how is that even possible? Like, someone Curtis LeMay drew up the list of cities to bomb, and someone didn't say, like, hang on, you know what? There's a huge population of Presbyterians. They were probably Presbyterian because it's Presbyterians that found that were big in China and Korea. There's a big population of Presbyterians in that town. Maybe that's the one we don't destroy. So when we rebuild this thing, I'm not even arguing for like, Christians are going to win the day when we rebuild, just like, how about we not nuke those people? We talk about martyrs. You talk about martyrs.
I know, right?
the Christians in Japan who got nuked.
Fucking hell.
Truman was probably mad as hell when he found out about it afterwards, because I think he was a Christian man, but who knows? Anyway,
all right,
that just popped in my head.
That's the Go to Hell podcast. Got nothing else to say about that. I don't even know how to transition out of that to be like, okay, so I guess we're talking about economics now.
I should have brought that up when we did the Attack on Titan episode.
Yeah, I'm like, golly. All right. Thank you for listening to the Go to Hell podcast. This is Colton. Colton can just go to hell. I know. I don't even know how to transition out of this now.
Well, we're at an hour, so.
On just this episode?
Yeah.
Fuck. That's what everybody else is thinking, too.
Sorry, guys. This episode was just an excuse for us to drink a second beer before we went home, so.
We're going to drink a third.
Oh, boy.
Well, unless you got...
it's the fires. No,
unless you got stuff to do today.
Hell no.
I was planning on being here until the Oklahoma game started. No, just kidding. Well, maybe. Who knows? It's 2 o'clock right
Okay,
now.
economics.
Economic. No.
Love your neighbor as yourself? I don't know. Where are you going with this?
Oh, okay. So I was thinking... Okay, so we started off with the last episode. Also... I'm hearing myself on the microphone, and I feel like it's gotten worse as we've gotten going. I threw out my voice on Thursday. It's coaching season, so I didn't have it
this
last
time of
season,
year, when the fall, when you're coaching, it's out.
Oh man, I'm fucking.
And everyone around you assumes it's because you're mad. It's like, no, I gotta yell over parents or
over parents the
your
hard part is
kids
athletes think that I'm mad when I get loud.
Right, your kids have ear covers. And there's stuff splashing around going in the pool, and it's just like, you're not hearing me. No, that would happen in football all the time. Like, why are you mad at me? I'm not. I've been yelling your name 5 times, and you didn't hear me. So, the worst is when it gets right when you yell somebody's name, it gets dead silent. I had that a couple times when I coached football, where for some reason, dropping a pin moment happened where the crowd stopped. There's nothing on the field, and you're like, Brent! And the whole crowd's like, what the hell did Brent do? And I'm like, and as soon as you hear yourself, you're like, why did everyone get so loud and make me look like an asshole? But it happens.
Well, and like my kids, so like my athletes, I think, get a little intimidated. I'm very chill and relaxed, but there are times where I can get very animated, and I think that they think that I'm getting angry towards them, and I'm not. I don't know. I love the saying, like, there's a new saying among kids where they're like, it's not that deep, bro. And like, I feel like that represents a lot of how I feel as a coach, because the kids take it personal, and I'm like, it's not that deep, bro. Like, it's not about you. It's just correct something. And I'm just trying to say it. I don't know. My wife sometimes gets this way with me. She's like, you just get too loud. Like when we're arguing or something, and I'm just like, I'm not loud, I'm just passionate. That's always kind of like the thing. I'm like, I'm just passionate about whatever it is that I'm talking. She's like, why are you yelling at me? I'm like, I'm not yelling, I'm just passionate. And it's just, and trying to, I think for kids and even for spouses, sometimes it's hard to navigate that, where it's like, although I do wish sometimes, like, I can't wait for the day for my wife to be like, for somebody to be like, man, your husband's really loud. And she's like, no, he's just passionate. You know, like, because that's how it is. It's just like, I was like, it's not that deep. Like,
Well, I look forward to the day that you've been coaching long enough that you use this misunderstanding with your players as a weapon. So you're just be like, they think I'm mad, but I'm really not. But I'm going to just go with it here.
yeah, we're just going to milk this a little bit. Actually, I can do that now. I 100% can do that. They're like, oh,
I had kids do that one year. They're like, one dumbass, like junior or sophomore told me, like, hey, coach, just so you know, we know you're upset because you turn your hat backwards. And I think I'd done it once, and so he thought he was being smart. So
it's actually just when you focus.
So I was like, okay, we're going to use that. So we'd be practice, and they're screwing around, and we're not getting serious about it. As I turn my hat around, like, oh, shit, he's mad.
Yeah, I don't have any tells like that, but the kids, yeah, I do. I love them a lot, but they think that sometimes they're in trouble just because I raise my voice.
Well,
and I'm like,
how much is that as kids just not getting used to being yelled at anymore, and they should be? Like,
I don't know.
Live in the
But
real
even then,
world.
like, I don't know.
Sometimes you get yelled at.
Like, here's the thing that I always, like, I don't like cussing at people, but I cuss regularly. So, like, I swear all the time, but I don't swear at people. And if I swear at someone, it's one of my best friends, and we know that we're joking with each other. Like, I'm like, bro, you're a fucking
You don't
piece
curse people out.
I'm like, yeah, I'm sitting there, I'm telling my friends, you're a fucking piece of shit.
Right.
They all know that I don't mean any of that. But yet, I'm not sitting there trying to berate somebody. I'm like, you're a fucking piece of shit. You know, like, and going after them. So I don't cuss people out. I don't berate them. And so from that idea, same thing where it's like, so like, you can get loud and you can yell, but I'm not yelling at you. You know, like, I don't know why kids, so you're like, you can yell at them. And I'm like, I'm not yelling at them. I'm yelling, but I'm not yelling at them. Like, I don't know. It's a weird concept. It's the world I live in. So, anyways, let's get to politics.
Well, yeah. They're expecting you to just quietly say, Brent, you're making bad choices.
Yeah. So,
sorry, folks, for watching another game, and someone just got murdered on the field.
Said, wow, I got it. Did they throw a flag for that?
Oh, yeah, he's been thrown out. It's still pending a review, but he's out.
Oh, okay. I was like,
he left his feet, his helmet. That was just, that's the kind of hit that looks awesome. But yeah, we can't have that in football anymore. They just called targeting in the Utah Baylor game.
Yeah.
This dude.
What's crazy is
no way that kid didn't
is
get
that
a
ref right
concussion.
there didn't throw a flag.
Yeah.
He watched that whole thing transpire and he's like, yeah, that was clean. What the heck? That was pure helmet lead. That guy tucked his shoulders.
Boom, left both feet.
Yeah, he literally went bullet formation to just pure helmet-to-helmet contact there. That's crazy.
It was like, this is what we think about Waco in Utah.
He's like, but I won't drink any alcohol because I'm a good Mormon boy.
Oh no, these are the pagan kids.
Oh, that's right. They weren't good enough to get accepted in BYU. Okay, so let's go with. Okay, so we started our conversation today on foreign policy,
Yeah. We've talked a lot about that. I
And
don't
like
think
I said,
we've ever talked economics.
and like I said, that's really simple. But I feel like economics is something that is so much more difficult to tackle.
It is.
As Christians because also a lot of you are recognizing that when it comes to economics and when it comes to the services that your government is providing for you is provided through your dollar, right? So you work your amounts, and I don't feel like I need to explain all of this to you. You all are like, yes, I'm well aware of how taxes work, but therefore, the things that our government decides to spend their money on is something that greatly affects you. I do think that sometimes we need to give some grace as to what they choose to spend their money on, and how they're running our economic structure. But I think Tim should probably start this one off. Tim has a background with helping those that are struggling economically, individually, navigate how to be successful in the current economic climate in the United States. And so I think that Tim would be best suited for explaining kind of, what it is that, I think you have a great insight
From the homeless?
No, I'm not even talking about homeless. I'm talking about what you do when you do
The financial stuff?
your financial stuff. I was like, you're teaching people how to navigate how economics work in our country and how to become a middle class citizen or middle to upper class citizen in our country. Do you not feel that way? Do you not feel like when you are doing your economics class that you are not helping people?
So I'll take that a step further. So let's just deal with personal finances. You were talking economics. I was thinking like,
Oh, we're gonna get there. I just thought we'd start
but
personal.
no, this
first.
is a good start. So we teach, the class we teach, the curriculum we use now is I was broke, now I'm not. It's basically a streamlined and rejiggered version of Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University. It's a 6-week class on how to get out of debt, how to set a budget, how to plan for retirement, etc. And why I teach that class, my wife and I, we teach the class, and we used to teach Financial Peace University. I think we taught that class 6 times over the course of a couple years at 2 different churches. So we've done the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace. We're doing this class. We're not like perfect students of it either. We have debt. We don't have killing debt. We have manageable debt that we are still trying to get out of. But I don't. If you're listening to this, I'm like, wait, shouldn't you be really good at finances? Like perfect? No. A lot of finances are a struggle. Much like your faith, it's a struggle. A lot of people are really good at it, and they can just really focus and stay out of debt and invest really well. Great for them. The rest of us, we have a bit of a problem. That's not my focus on the class, and I make it there's a point in the class every year where I make it clear. I make this clear. This isn't again like a doctrinal thing. It's not orthodoxy. It's my view of Christianity. I think if Christians viewed this world more, we'd be in a much better place. But my view is Christians should manage their finances well so that they're either out of debt or they have minimal amount of debt. They can plan for their future. They can plan for their retirement, hopefully plan for something left for their kids, but also while they're here, have enough money and plan their finances to where they can live well, and to whatever degree you and your wife have sat down and had a conversation with Jesus and you feel convicted, your money is going to the kingdom of God. And so, what do I mean specifically about that? Most churches in the United States, they have a 10% rule. You got to tithe. I'm not against the tithing. Well, I don't like the tithing rule. It's not unbiblical, but I also think the way it's used is incorrectly. Tithing is an Old Testament thing. It's very specific to the Old Testament. And my problem actually with Christians who preach tithing is it's actually if I'm going to be, from my perspective, it's kind of a stingy way of treating God's kingdom. Old Testament, if you're giving up 10% of what you have, for most people, that was a lot. If I'm being honest, for most Americans, if you're giving up 10% of your income, it's not a lot of money. Even if you're poor.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of money. Now, that said, let me keep going back further. I am also not a tither as a rule, because I do think sometimes Christians do get in bad financial circumstances, and I think Jesus is more concerned with you getting out of your financial mess, whether you caused it or not, than continue to tithe 10%. If one remains faithful and they continue to give 10% when they're in the middle of this financial crisis, that's fine. But most churches, sorry, it's better for you to get out of your mess. If you're truly trying to get out of your mess, you're not spending it on a bunch of nonsense. You're truly trying to spend it out of your mess, and you go 6 months without tithing, I don't think that's a problem. To take it the other way, if you're doing really well and you have a lot of disposable income and all you're doing is throwing it at really nice cars and a second house or a vacation home, I don't think that that's unchristian or it's unbiblical. But I think we are called to be as generous as possible to whatever we can be. So, for instance, in my family, I'm not going to say what the percentage is, but our percentage is not 10%. It's well above that. Because I believe I've been given way more money than I need. And it's my job to give it to places where I think it's going to be effective, helping other people out. And we give to 2 charities. One is the one here that we've mentioned that helps the chronically homeless get out of being chronically homeless. And the other one is focused on educating and providing microloans to people in some of the worst slums in the world. Well, 2 slums and one, Guatemala, one of the most dangerous areas in the world, in one of the largest slums in the world in Kenya, and then in rural Haiti, an area like 2.5 hours outside of, it's 2.5 hours as the crow flies outside of Port-au-Prince. And these places are run by Christians. They're not Christian schools, but they're run by Christians, providing people who would normally have no education, get an education. Not only get an education, but at every instance get top-flight education, get access to job training or microloans, like I said, in Kenya, in Nairobi, Kenya. In Haiti, they have a collective farm where they raise goats and other things. So these are things, because 15 years ago, I would have been like, oh, they're not promoting Christianity, and they're, you know, money needs to go to what do you call it? Anyway, I believe the church is the most effective when it's on the ground, helping people out, and people learn, oh, this is what Christians do. This is who they are. So that's what we do with our financial class. What our financial class is, if you need help getting out of debt, get out of debt. No one should be saddled with debt. Debt is it makes you prisoner. It robs you of choices. It robs you of what kind of job you should be in that maximizes your talents, or what makes you just the best person or best Christian. Robs you of where you need to live. If you need to move somewhere else, it's a prison. Get you out of debt. Get you on a plan so that your money is working for you and you're not working for your money, because 90% of Americans are working for their money and not the other way around.
100%.
Which gets back to the debt thing. Planning for a future, not for we are not as Americans. Sorry, we're not guaranteed some glorious, wonderful retirement at age 55, so we can just go off and play tennis and play golf. Like, you got enough money to do that and fund the kingdom, great. But
I don't want to play golf. Tennis is free. So.
Plan for your kids' future if you have kids. And again, how can you maximize money? How can you maximize your money in God's kingdom where it's needed? So, that's my micro view of economics and in how we teach economics at our church.
I've never seen that State Farm commercial.
Yeah, while I was talking, Colton was watching a State Farm commercial that has Danny Rojas.
It has Danny
Football
Rojas.
is life.
That's what matters. Oh,
Football is life. And I think in that commercial he says, bundling is life.
I freaking love Danny Rojas.
It's coming back. The show's coming back.
It should actually. Wait a minute. Okay, I feel all right. Whatever. That is a 4-hour podcast anyway. So I mean, who cares?
We're halfway through. This is our average, man.
I thought this last week. I was like, you know, I think I'm okay if it doesn't come back.
I thought it was not coming back. I thought we were done, but Danica told me last week.
And I was like, it'd still be good to come back. Blah blah blah. See Beard and you know, Roy kind of coached the team or whatever. But here's some things, some elements that I like that I'm okay with. That I was like, I like that it ended that way. Because now they're going to have to develop some of these things that I feel like they're going to have to add story to it, where I was like, you know, I like that they didn't go down that road. And I feel like if there was further seasons, they were going to go down that road. 1, the chick that owns the team.
Yeah, I can't remember her name. Anyway.
They're going to make it where she's like running out of money. There's going to be an episode or something where they're going to be like, she's running out of money, and that's going to be a stressor on the team or whatever for the season or whatever. That's going to be inevitable.
Okay, I don't like where we're going so far.
I thought that was already. What, do you not think that that's a possibility for how that's going to go?
Just keep going with your things, and then I'll chime in.
Okay, 2, I like the Roy and the Jamie Tart relationship.
Okay.
And I like that it didn't matter about, I was like, they got super upset about the Keeley thing, but yet they were still kind of bros at the end. But yet I'm afraid that it's like, okay, we're going to need to resolve this, and one of them's going to have to get the girl. And I was like, I like that Keeley was in a good spot. And I like that the 2 boys also were like, they were like, this is what we want, but like, we can't always get what we want. And so it kind of became, but yet they were still bros at the end of it after they fought for Keeley. And so I was like, that's one of those things that they're going to have to pull. Now, I will say that Ted's leaving is abrupt. And so and what is the show still going to be called Ted Lasso? Because like
I'm gonna have.
I like his ending to the show. I think it was a little too abrupt, in my opinion. You don't. I mean, we can sense it happening, but it was like, okay, mom shows up. He's not like I'm leaving her or whatever. He learns the whole sport, and he's like, all right, I'm out. I got to get back to what's important to me, and which is good.
No, I don't think it was abrupt.
Okay.
It was just more subtle than you're picking. Once they, look, I guess in terms of modern American TV show, it was abrupt, but I think it was paced actually very well. Once we find out that his dad, who he had been revering, we just kept hearing all this great stuff about his dad, had then committed suicide, and he was angry about it.
But that was in the second to last episode.
I know. But again, this is a show where people have epiphanies, and in that moment, Ted says aloud what he had never figured out. The therapist gets out of him what as intuitive and emotionally intelligent that as this guy is, he knows what makes everybody else tick. He's finally got someone who cracks open his code. And what he realizes in that moment is, because he's just thinking out loud. She's not like pulling it out of him. He says, I wish I told him how good of a dad he was.
Yeah. And I mean, like,
I think that flips him to say, I need to be there for my kid.
Yeah, and so I'm excited to see it come back, but yet I'm still like, I think that they were good. So like, again, I'm okay with how Ted's story ended. I'm okay with how Keely, Roy, and Jamie ended. I'm okay with how, why can't I think of the boss lady's name?
I'm trying to remember. Rebecca.
I like how her story ended. But you know that these are some of the TV plot dramas where we're going to throw it in there. And if I'm being honest, season 3 felt a little bit gimmicky at times, but it was still good. It was still heartfelt, I don't know. I just don't want it to turn into a WB show where it becomes like this.
No, that's my concern. I think season 3 worked because...
But they were on there where they were like trying to push some agendas.
They were that episode, that season, they were pushing social agendas with the whole what's his name's gay thing and stuff. Whatever.
Actually, I liked the gay episode, and like I said, that was like one of I like that as a straight male, and who had friends that came out as gay. Like I was like, I appreciated that episode because I felt like the soccer player that got angry with him.
Oh yeah. Shoot, Isaac
got angry with his team.
Yeah, Isaac.
Whatever. That was
yeah.
gay. Yeah, he just gets angry with him, and he's just like, he still stands up for him and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, and it's the end of that episode that I love the most, where he comes over to his house and he's like, why the fuck didn't you tell me?
Yeah.
Like, what, you thought I was gonna judge you? Like, I care about you, man.
Well, I think he said, what did I, like, what vibes did I give off?
Right, exactly, 100%.
That made you think I was going to be like, you're dead to me.
Yeah, and I love, and so,
and then they
have one of the best moments, in my opinion, of the show where I see those athletes grow. And I mean, like, it's a show, right? So it's all dramatized, but yet that moment was something that was special to me, was when they're playing FIFA together. And the guy's like, he's like, so what, you like check us out while we're in the shower? And he's like, no, I don't. Like, I just like look at the whatever.
Don't diminish that scene. That scene is fundamental because whoever's writing that, I don't know who. I don't know if it's Sudeikis writing every episode or what, but that is someone who is not treating someone who's homophobic or homophobic adjacent as a caricature. They're treating him with some humor, being like, okay, I told you I don't have a problem with it, but I'm still like, I don't get it. Like, so
Yeah, I
don't
don't
you
get
get
it.
a
And he
boner? Don't you get when you're in a room with and he's like, it doesn't work that way. That is a great way to treat the thing. Like,
it's so great. And my favorite line is actually the last line of the whole thing. Is the gay guy says, "I love you, bro," and they're like clicking the buttons or whatever on the controller, and there's this little awkward silence, and he's like, "You can't say it, can you?" And he's like, "No, I can't." And they're like, and then it's the click of the buttons from them playing the PlayStation, and then he goes, "But you know I do, right?" And that's such I love that moment.
yeah, it's humanizing both sides. It's the people who struggle with it and not treating him like
100%.
homophobic.
I felt like I related to that guy so much. Where
Yeah.
It was just like, I would 100% be uncomfortable just telling a gay guy, like, hey, man, love you, bro. Like, like it'd just be a little weird for me. But at the same time, I'm like, but I do. Like, that I care about you and what's going on with you and all this kind of stuff. I think season 3 had great moments. And I'm okay with the way that it ended. It's cool that it's coming back. I'm just afraid.
Yeah, I'm afraid it's coming back as a franchise.
Yeah.
And not what it was.
If they come back and they blow my socks off fourth season, then I'm going to be like, all right, these guys obviously knew what it is that we needed and all this kind of stuff. But don't come back.
If it's coming back without Lasso, I don't know that I'm going to watch. I'll probably let other people watch and let them say, oh, it's really good. But, I mean, look.
I do watch that show for Ted.
I've been very adamant about the show. We've talked about it on several episodes. That show, taking aside the very libertine view of sex that the British have, taking that aside, that is the most Christian Jesus view of the world show I've ever seen in a human-to-human contact human-to-human contact of person-to-person. Hey, I get it. You are mad. Divorce does crazy things to people. I forgive you. You know what that little shit did? He forgave me. Like, those moments folks, as Christians, that's the world we live in. You forgive someone and they're mad later. They expect pots and pans and glasses to be thrown at them. And how dare you? I'm supposed to be like penalized for what I did. And you're telling me you forgive me? That's nuts. That's insane. And that show, time after time after time, is just subconsciously. I don't know. I don't know Jason. I don't know Sudeikis' background. What he seems to. I think he's got a family religious background. This seems like someone who knows religion. This is a guy who's infusing, like, again, turn your other cheek, love your neighbor as yourself, all of those things in just humanity and day to day. And if the show's not that, and it's just now like Beard being Beard and the other assistant coach and everyone just being like characters. Look, as much as I love them, that's not what made that show. It was people time after time stepping out and doing things emotionally forgiving one another. The scene where Ted plays darts.
Oh yeah, it's the greatest
with
scene.
the other guy.
It's actually the greatest scene in
That's
the whole show.
the best scene in the whole show because Rebecca's kind of there, like really loving Ted. And Ted keeps telling her, you're better than this guy. You're better than this guy. And he just does the whole thing and just this whole story about people misreading people. That scene, if that show doesn't have that and it's just funny characters because we've fallen in love with Jamie Turner, like, I'm sorry. I'll probably watch it. I'll enjoy it. But I'm going to feel cheated from the deep, like, that show is what normally you have to get in books.
Well, and then that was also, so you also get from, that's also, I also think that they ended the show really well on the Rebecca note as far as her and her ex-husband.
Oh yeah.
I was like, he can't come back to the show, in my opinion.
No, because he's been given time and time again. He's been
I was
given.
like, that whole storyline has been closed, in my
Right.
opinion. The whole closure has come full circle. Rebecca doesn't care anymore about it, and that was part of the that was part of the third season. That was supposed to be.
And now she's got empathy because the new girl has come to her and said he's cheating on me.
Yeah, exactly.
And now it's like, okay, I have to love on this poor girl that replaced me, and now she's where I've been. So it's again, it's one of those moments like, yeah, you got to give it up. So and help this. Yes. Well, actually, that girl shows up after they're already divorced, but it's like, yeah, I've been where you've been. The other one is when Beard shows up because he won't forgive Nate. And now we find this whole which maybe that's where the show goes, is more backstories, but it's second to last episode, and
it is the second to last.
Beard all of a sudden vomits out this whole backstory, and you're like, really? Really? Okay, that's
it's literally
amazing.
Les Miserables.
Yeah.
Doesn't one of them say Les Miserables? It's like Les Miserables.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it is.
Yeah, Nate goes, it sounds like Les Miserables. Yeah, it's exactly like Les Miserables. So I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. When I'm seeing Danny Rojas on State Farm commercials, I'm a little leery. Like we've just turned this into a franchise. It's now Joni Loves Chachi instead of Happy Days.
Yeah. Well, all right, let's get back to economics.
That was TED Talk.
Nice.
Brought to you by the Go to Hell podcast.
That's a good one. All right.
And Hollywood Way Brewing Company. No, Lincoln Beer Company.
Oh, yeah, we actually haven't talked about this one.
This one's
We are drinking a West Coast IPA from Lincoln Beer Company in Burbank, California. It is called Hollywood Way. It is 6.5% ABV. Its hop blend is Amarillo, Bravo, Cascade, Cashmere, and El Dorado Lupomax. It's vegan, and it has an IBS of 25. Family owned and operated. They're out of Lima Street in Burbank. Yeah, I gotta say about this beer, honestly, okay, I don't know. I don't know if Tim will say if he agrees with this, but I want to say that this beer, and the more beer that we drink from around the country or around different places, I don't know why, but when I drank this, I was like, this is a Los Angeles West Coast. Like, if I was in a tap room in Los Angeles and I drank a West Coast IPA there, and it tasted like this, I'd be like, yeah, this is what this is. I just feel like that's how it is. Do you disagree? Do you agree? I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking about this when I was down in LA and drinking at that Whole Foods, because there are all these new LA breweries that I had not heard of popping up, and I thought, why is all these places up and down the West Coast, Portland, Seattle, north of the Bay Area, San Jose area, San Diego, all these areas have popped up as these little meccas of beer on the West Coast, and Los Angeles never did until very recently. They've had microbrew, they've had it a while, but it's not become anything like San Diego, for instance.
Yeah, no.
We've had El Segundo and a couple other places.
Yes.
My theory is it's the reason why LA is different than every other city in the country is San Diego, as big as and sprawling as it is, it's still, those breweries are basically they originally popped up. It's all walking distance stuff.
Yeah, and even
Portland's
if you go,
walking distance.
Even if you go to like, I was like, because we have North Park,
Right.
so all those are walking distance. That's why we were able to do so. If you're like following along, and
Let's just
listen
put it
to
this
the-
way: it's walking distance, or used to be taxi distance.
Oh yeah, and
You,
even
but
like
you
when
could
we
hit
went
a
to
couple
Miramar, it was
places.
like-
Didn't require. You could hit several places in a, let's say, 5-mile radius in Portland, Seattle, San Diego. In Los Angeles, no, it'd be, well, we got to go to the airport to go to El Segundo, and then we're going to go all the way to downtown to this other one.
That's fair.
Is that it? Yeah, that's pretty much all we got. And so, all right, well, who's driving? And even with Uber, when Uber was a thing popular in Los Angeles,
Well,
I
and
mean,
even
that's,
now
that's
it's like,
still
okay, we got a good brewery in Huntington. We got a good brewery in.
yeah. So now we're gonna go 45 minutes to Huntington Beach. So
Yeah.
it's just not conducive to what we describe on here, where you want to hit, like when we're up in Santa Rosa, there's so many breweries, we still have not hit all of them, despite the number of times we've been up there. So
I know. And if you're playing along, since we started this podcast, we've been up there like 5 times.
yeah.
At least.
So this is, what is this? This is,
Well, it's hard when Moonlight takes up like the majority of my time every time I want to go there.
I enjoy this, but it does have a very, I don't know what the flavor is.
I kid you not. I drank this and I was like, this is from Los Angeles. I didn't even like look at the thing. I was like, this is a Los Angeles beer. I don't know why that like came to mind, but that's what I thought.
What's crazy is,
I mean,
this is in Burbank. This is probably near my friend Jamie's place.
near Jamie. It says
I might need to make a
it's
stop
on-
by.
It's on Lima Street. So that's what we're drinking right now. We do want to get to the economics conversation. We're going to make this into a 20-hour episode.
It's our War and Peace.
Yes.
Economic War and Peace.
Economic War and Peace. So when it comes to economics, things are a little bit more difficult when it comes to it biblically. There's not a lot of backing from the Bible standpoint on a lot of this. I mean, there's things against rich people. Oh, my bad. There's, about poor inheriting the earth, all that kind of stuff.
Well, let's deal with the rich people real quick. You want to, from a biblical standpoint, just from a gospel standpoint? How about we just start there?
From the Gospels?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Because I think that's a perfect example of how Jesus is not favorable to rich people in his language.
In the book of Luke, yeah.
But he hangs out with them a lot.
Oh, he does hang out with them a lot.
He even, he's got some fairly important interactions with rich Romans.
Yeah,
And so this is where you got to be careful when you're reading your Bible. Well, Jesus, because there have been movements in Christianity built around the rich, Jesus saying something negative about the rich guy. And yet, okay, he said that, but let's holistically look at Jesus's life.
What I also think that here's the thing is I love the book of Luke is great, but also understand that the book of Luke is the woke book. like at the time, like people were reading that out of the 4 interpretations of Jesus, Luke makes Jesus out to be this, he's for women's rights. He's for this is where women get their validation from. This is where he's like, I'm speaking out for the poor people. Luke's version of Jesus is fucking Rage Against the Machine. Like Jesus, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. And so it's great to look at him through that lens sometimes because, you want to start a riot or, whatever. You want to take the power back. But at the same time, we need to recognize who Jesus is. What is he trying to do here? And that kind of stuff. And so if you're sitting there and you're looking at, the rich people suck in Luke. And yeah, that's true. And I'm not saying that I do believe it is really difficult in the same way that Jesus talked about it, where it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And that's from the idea of and that's why when Tim talks about being a libertarian, I believe that I take that particular piece and I look at humanity and I believe that we are just too selfish. And I view that with our economic system. I believe that if we turned all of our economics, and I talked about this last week where I was like, I can't fully submit to libertarianism because I believe that mankind is they're too selfish. I believe that we care too much about ourselves, and not Tim. Like, when I'm talking about people, I'm not talking about Tim. And Tim's a libertarian, and that's great.
No,
but I think that
you're speaking from a human condition standpoint, so keep going.
Yeah, and so what I'm saying is that I feel like there are people that are out there that, and here's how I would describe it. Is let's look at it from so you don't give money. Let's go with time. Corporations or churches even that run themselves on volunteer labor and volunteer work. 20% of the people are doing 80% of the work. And I believe that is 100% the case. Honestly, I think that it's even worse once you start asking for money.
Yeah.
I think it's less than that once you start asking for money.
Yeah. No, the church has the same problem. Our politics, it's the same mentalities infected both, which is, I'm going to give you my money so I don't have to give you my time.
Yeah.
And you're hearing that as a accusation against the churchgoer or the citizen. Don't hear that. I mean, yeah, it's that, and that's how the system also that's kind of what the system's saying. Yes, give me your money. In churches' instances, a lot of times they're complaining because they want both your money and your time. But in the government, no, just give me your money and I'll take care of everything for you.
Yeah. No, and it becomes difficult because, when we're looking at this economic system and we get to money, people become a lot more stingy when it comes down to how they want their money spent. And what's so crazy, I'm sorry to those of you that I'm possibly going to, you may stick to your guns and come after me or whatever. It's so funny to me, the people that pay taxes, I know, which is all of you that are legal citizens with a job that you have registered. You all complain about the taxes that you have to give and where the money's going. But have you ever done the math on where your money is going? That's always kind of been a weird concept for me because I'm like, you complain.
Going where on the second one? To the church or just
taxes?
Oh,
you
taxes.
Get taxed. Where is your money? If you were to break it down, so you look at the governmental spending of your money specifically. So I say, okay, so let's say that once a month you give up $2,000 to both state and not both, but $2,000 collectively to state and federal income tax, which is a large amount to give
Yeah.
to state and federal tax. How much of that money goes into each of the areas that you are complaining about? How much of your money, because you want to talk about it, the fact that it's your money that you're paying for those services or whatever, how much of that, what is the percentage of that money that goes into those things that you are complaining about? And I'm sorry, unless you're complaining about military, the amount of money that you are spending per month on education, the amount of money that you're spending per month on welfare for other people is minuscule in the grand scheme of things. And so it's like, okay, so what are you paying for with that money? And if you're asking that question, that's a good question. Things that we need to recognize in this country is that you get to drive down roads. And you're like, well, that's how it should be. And I'm like, what does that mean? That's how that should be. You have to pay for that somehow. So how is that getting paid for? Police officers, firemen. I don't know if people, do people acknowledge? I don't understand. That's actually the hard part about economics that hits me a little bit is where do people not understand the free? I don't think people it's one of those things that you take for granted all the free services that exist within our country that you're not acknowledging. What do you think? Go for it. You bounce back and forth. So you have.
I think this gets back to the federalism problem. I think we've inverted the economic tree. So I'll speak for myself. And I mean this. I've meant this for a long, long, long time. Before I was a libertarian, even now that I claim that I am. I would much rather spend 30% tax on here in my city. Let's just go city. Let's make it really simple. City. I'd much rather spend 30% tax here in my city and a 10% tax in the state of California and a 5% tax in the federal government. But we've got it inverted because, to your point, federal government, there's roads they have to pay for. There's interstates that are paid for by the federal government. There's state highways in California that are a mess that don't seem to be paid for even though we have a gas tax. But if I pay 30% here, one, I know where it's going. It's going to my schools, and if that sounds selfish, it's not. I know where it's going to my schools. I know where it's going to my roads. I know it's going to my police, my fire, yada yada. I even know where it's going to deal with frankly, the ridiculous homeless problem we have for a city our size. We have a massive problem for a town only 70,000 people. The farther out you go, I have less accountability for where that money goes.
Yeah, that's true.
Goes to Sacramento in a state this size. Look, if I'm living in New Hampshire, I know where it's going in my county, and I damn well still know where it's going in my state. It's a tiny state. New Jersey, I know where it's going. South Carolina, still have a pretty good idea where it's going. Mississippi, still have a pretty good idea where it's going. Oklahoma, even then, I would still have a pretty good idea where it's going because Oklahoma is one of those states where it's got Oklahoma City, it's got Tulsa, Stillwater, and a lot of small towns and a lot of open area. You get the federal government, it just seems to be just a money laundering scheme where for every dollar I give, 50 cents is a haircut to somebody else, and it's not going where it's going. And I think that's where the frustration is. And so again, I think this is where we need to inverse things. Now, that's my view. I would still say, unfortunately, and I think incorrectly, a lot of Christians would say, no, I'm still not giving money because it's to the government. Two things on that. One, on one side, the progressive side, Well, let me back up. Colton, do you believe the biblical, either the Old Testament directive of tithing or whatever is discussed in the New Testament, whether it be what Jesus talks about or what's talked about in Acts about people sharing their giving, do you think that has any application as Christians to how we pay taxes?
No,
Okay.
not
Because
at
I see
all.
that a lot.
Not at all.
I see that a lot. I'm going to say that it's not disparaging. I think it's accurate. I see that from more leftist Christians where, we're supposed to give. My problem with that is, one, again, you're applying an ancient book. Yes, there were taxes paid in Roman times, although it's funny. Everybody running around with Jesus hated those taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about the most libertarian group. I don't think any of the disciples, certain disciples had a bigger problem with the taxes than others. Well, I guess there was one who had no problem with the taxes because he was a collector.
Yeah.
Which is funny. I'll put a pin in that. Come back to later. This is where, if you think, well, we're supposed to tithe, and so 10% is 10%, but, modern, giving 15% or something, federal government's not a big deal. Look, you're now in a realm where you're compelling people who aren't followers of Jesus to give because of your biblical worldview. And that I have a problem with that. It's one thing to stand up, as we said in the last episode, and call people to be peacemakers and say, hey, let's stop fighting these wars, or let's not be behind these wars between other people, versus we're going to compel based on our Christian worldview, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I agree.
Is there a world where where, just say U.S. government, is there a world where the U.S. government is, well, no. Is there a world where government, I'm going to take U.S. government can serve as a biblical function for Christians?
So when you say that, it's so hard because, and especially I appreciate that you said government, not U.S. government, because I think a lot of times we lose sight of what government means. If you are a part of the Christian faith, you submit to God as a governing body over you.
Right.
And so when I say that I submit to Jesus, I submit to his ethical model. I submit to his whatever. And there are certain policies that are in place, right? And so do I have to pay for those services? When the church first started in Acts, people were having to pay for the services that were provided. The commune that they really started in the beginning of Acts required people to give up property, for people to give up funds to be able to survive and thrive.
Yeah, it was a commune.
It was a commune. I stand by that.
It was 100% a commune. Which is funny because that happened today. You 100% call them a cult.
Which,
well, the problem is because,
no, but that I wouldn't blame anybody for calling them a cult.
Because I was gonna follow up because the problem is that's how cults have behaved in the United States, unfortunately, for the last 50 years or so.
Shout out the Mormons. No, but at the same, so there's this whole thing going on with Jesus and his disciples and his followers, and he's revolutionized the faith and all this kind of stuff. And economically, what do we do? I feel like there is this question of what do we do with our money? Right? And you have this really kind of weird situation in Acts where you have the two people that drop dead because they lie about how much money they give.
I don't know. I just had this discussion with a friend of mine.
Well, we had this discussion, like a year ago?
We had
a
it,
year and a half ago?
but I want to bring this. It's just an interesting side note. I have a friend, one of my high school friends. He's got a family situation where his parents died, and they made him the executor of the estate, and the estate says there's three boys. His older brother, him, and his younger brother get X amount from the estate. Ironically, considering how much we bring them up. Grace Community Church, John MacArthur's church, gets 10%. Because they're MacArthurites. They believe in tithing. So I'm laughing, but you know what? I don't think Jesus is going to mock them when their mom died, because she stuck to her gun. So, you know what? Good for her. She's got it in her will that 10% goes to what she thought was... No, not what she thought. Was her community. That was her community. Warts and all, that was her community, and she was a great Christian woman. So was her husband, my friend's dad. So, as much as we dump on John MacArthur and his church... They do a lot of great things. And so it was to her credit when she died, when she had 10% going to that church. And so my friend wants to live in the house. His brothers understandably want their cash out of whatever the house is worth. So they're trying to figure out how to get this whole thing working. And my buddy says, do I need to pay the 10% now? Or can I pay the 10% later?
Yeah.
So you can pay the 10% later. He goes, well, my brothers are getting it now. And I said, but you're not getting it now. You're living in the house. You're buying the house. Well, then shouldn't then the church's percent go to 15%? I'm like, no. So he also asked his younger brother. His younger brother had a much better answer that I liked, which he'd already asked his younger brother. His younger brother actually might be listening to this. Mark, if you're listening, yes, I'm talking about you. His younger brother said, "What are you? You're just being a Pharisee. You're creating a law that doesn't exist." Did mom and dad want you to live in the house? Yes. Do I want my money? Does my older brother want my money? Yes. Pay us our money. The church will get its 10% at some point.
Yeah.
So, I don't know why I brought that up. What are we talking about? What were we talking about? Damn it.
We were talking about
The New Testament. What were we talking about? New Testament rules?
the New Testament and whether or not there's spending, or how do we respond to that nowadays when it comes to the Book of Acts and the commune and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. So
we
I
talked about the two people that gave up.
Okay,
their
now
lives.
so let me wrap up my story, because that's why I brought it up. He was still struggling with it, and I said, John, do you intend to pay that money at some point? Yes. So what are we talking about? Well, I just don't want to be... I just don't, I don't want to be punished for not paying the money. I said, it's not like you're Ananias and the other guy. And the funny thing is, again, this is a MacArthurite. He'd forgotten the story. He's like, oh, I completely forgot the story. I was like, it's not like you're telling God you're going to pay the money when you know you're not going to pay the money. That's what happens. The church comes to them. They say, are you going to pay? Are you going to sell all your possessions? I did not say Siri. Shh. Go away. Are you going to sell all your possessions? Yes, we are. They don't sell their possessions. Did you sell your possessions? Yes, I did. It's not for, and you're correct in bringing the story up, because this story has been used for 2 millennium now for what happens to you when you don't give up your possessions that God wants. That is not the sin. The sin is lying about it and pretending to be holier than one is. If they had said, no, I'm not going to sell my possessions, okay, well, go find another church or go find another community where they don't require you to sell everything because we're communal here. They wouldn't have been struck dead. They might not have also found a church because it might have been all the churches at that time were communal, but they were struck dead for lying.
Yeah, exactly.
And pretending to be something that they weren't.
Right.
But you're correct. And I think a lot of us, if we're honest, all of us who read our Bibles as Christians, that part of the Bible, I think we've all had moments in our lives where we read it and go, wow, early church went all in.
Yeah. Which is tough because, again, early
Does
church...
that say something about me or does it say something about the time?
Well, everybody thinks that it says something about them. The idea is that, okay, so the church went all in and they wanted, and they gave up all their possessions, all their money, all their property.
Well, there's some logic to that because it removes who's better than who based on how much money they have and who's got better clothes and all that kind of thing. Yes,
but then it comes into this idea where people all of a sudden are like, they don't, the funds stop coming in.
Right.
It all of a sudden is like, okay, we got everything that we had and we bought all this property, or we have all this property, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, but then how do we feed people?
Right.
And how do we get, because again, and here's what people need to understand, and what we've talked about on this podcast is that they 100% believed that Jesus was coming back any day. And if you are sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, well, I believe that Jesus is coming back any day, you don't live your life the way that these people live their life, and that they literally believe that Jesus was coming back tomorrow.
Yeah.
If you have a job right now, if you believe that Jesus is coming back tomorrow, you are so fucking dumb for having a job right now. Because there's no fucking point. If you believe that Jesus is going to come back and he's going to rearrange the whole hierarchy and all this kind of stuff, well then what's the fucking point of having a job? What's the point of having an education? Blah, 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 blah. And so you've allowed, but that's not how those people legitimately believed that Jesus was coming back tomorrow. Like, I know that in the scriptures, and so a lot of you might be taking offense to this. You're like, no, I believe that he's coming back tomorrow. And I'm like, no, I don't think you understand how dedicated these people were to the thought that Jesus was coming back tomorrow. It's the same thing as like they were literally planning for a flight up to heaven. They literally were packing their fucking bags. And they're just like, yeah, everything's temporary, so I'm going to sell everything that I have, and I'm just going to throw my bag over my shoulder and just be ready for when this guy shows up. But then after a month or two goes by, all of a sudden it becomes Paul and Peter's problem, where they're like, okay, we apparently got to rein this in. So we have all these people that believe in this problem, but now we have to establish, okay, wait a minute. Okay, so Jesus isn't exactly going to come back tomorrow. We don't actually know when he's coming back. And so all the people are like, okay, what the fuck do we do? And so they have to establish these communes where people need to go to work. They contribute money so that way they're able to have what it is that they have. And that becomes a large portion of the tithing community within the new Christian church. That's where that established. Because again, there's no priest at this point, right? You don't have what the Jews have. Because the Jews, remember, have the temples, the priests, and you tithe the parts of your possessions. You have all this kind of stuff. And the Jews are able to, or the priests are able to live off of that. A high priest in the Jewish community was a very wealthy man. Not that he lived lavishly. That's not what I'm getting at. But somebody who had all of his needs taken care of at the time. And who had immense political power. Do you disagree?
No, it's like black pastors.
Wow, that's not what I was going to go with. I was going to say the Pope. But I was like...
No, and I'm joking, but that's still a thing. Unfortunately, there's a lot of churches. A lot of them are black churches. It's not because it's a black thing. It's because they tend to be Pentecostal and holiness and what I think. Well, they're Methodist too, but it's kind of a crossover. No, there's a big belief within the church in America that frankly, it's a Mormon thing too. The guy who makes the most money, who lives in the big house and drives a Cadillac, is supposed to be the pastor because it's some sign of holiness.
Yeah, and it makes...
And everyone just kind of deals with it. It's like, all right, well, I'm still here living on food stamps, hoping for Jesus to help me get by, but Pastor so-and-so, he's a really good man.
Right.
Well, you brought that up. Remember in Acts, after you brought up they turned to tithing. They also turned to when things start getting scarce, they get a little uppity because Gentiles are now starting getting taken care of. Because some people in the church say, "Yeah, we need to take care. There's some Gentile widows and orphans that we need to take care of." I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa! We're not taking care of them.
Yeah, no.
And in fact, I think that's one of the most instructive passages in the New Testament because for those who are idealistic, the answer is not probably all that fulfilling to you. They didn't make it to where, no, we're going to serve the Gentiles as well, and everyone's going to be one happy family. Nope. They essentially set up two churches, and one was for the Jews and one was for the Gentiles. Because again, Christianity tries to exist within the culture that it's in, and it doesn't transform everything radically immediately.
Yeah, I know.
Sometimes it does, often it doesn't. And in that's one of those instances where everyone says, okay, you know what? We are going to take care of the Gentile who need things, but they're going to set up their own little soup kitchen to take care of themselves.
Yeah, right.
There's two issues with the rich man having a hard time to pass through the eye of the needle or whatever. I think Jesus is talking about one, rich people just generally don't need things. And if we're being honest, a lot of times people turn to God when they need things.
Yeah, I agree. He whispers in our victories and he shouts in our defeats.
Right, which is then the counter to, where you and I have been really honest. Yeah, you know what? You and I don't really, to date, have not had a lot of hard times. We've been rich men, but those things might be a-coming.
Yeah.
And it's in those moments where the non-spiritual side of you really starts coming out and saying, yeah, you know what? I really need to lean into. I'm not so rich. I'm not rich in wealth. I'm not rich in health. I'm not rich in whatever.
Yeah.
I'm now tapping into a side of you that I hadn't had to do before. And the rich man just generally doesn't have to do that.
No, It's a problem for another day.
Are we done? I can wrap this up with one little interesting story if you want, that tells how Christian ideology can turn into a cult and really turn things up, take things off the rails.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Have you heard the term "drink the Kool-Aid"?
Yes, I say that actually fairly regularly.
And do you know you? So
I know
you use
yes,
it, and
I know
you
the
know what
background
it's in
behind it.
reference to.
Yes, 100%.
Okay, if you're listening to this, and you know the term, or you don't even know the what's the proper?
Yeah, what's the cult that did that? I don't know.
It's the Jonestown cult. It's a cult so there's a cult. So if you've ever heard "drink the Kool-Aid," you're not really sure, but you're
My
smart
parents
enough
used to use that slogan all the time. They used to
Right.
be like, "You drank the Kool-Aid."
If you've heard it, you've heard it, and you're not really sure though. You know the meaning of it, but you're not sure where it exists.
And what the term means, actually, in my family's opinion, and hopefully when you've done it, if anybody else has said, "Well, you've drank the Kool-Aid," what that means is you bought into somebody else's BS. Is usually what that means.
Correct.
So,
So if you never heard the term. Well, let's just start with you never heard the term. Drank the Kool-Aid. Colton just addressed that. It means you're buying somebody's BS. Probably you've drank someone's BS, and it's probably to your detriment. If you've heard the term and you know what it means, but you don't know where it originates from the People's Temple
yep.
Church down in Guyana, which is a part of it's north of Brazil in South America. A bunch of Americans moved down there. They drank 918 men, women, children drank Kool-Aid on November 18th, 1978, and committed suicide drinking cyanide. Well, most of them drank. All but a couple drank cyanide-laced Kool-Aid. I will get to the other couple in a minute.
In the commune.
It was a commune. It had started in the United States. They had moved down there because they felt like they were being persecuted by the CIA and the FBI. There was a part of that separate incident where a U.S. congressman had been down there. He got shot on a runway at an airport nearby. But they felt like the federal government was closing in on him. They decided to commit suicide. They all drank this. Their leader was Their leader was Jim Jones. He had started the cult. The cult had actually been around. This is why I'm bringing this up. So even if you're listening to this and you think you know a lot about, or you have a pretty good idea about the Jonestown incident, there's a lot to this group that I think leads us from not just, well, it'll be apparent when I'm done. They're led by this leader, a pastor. He's not just a leader. He's led by this pastor, Jim Jones. By the time they get down to Guyana, this is a very, very sophisticated group. It's not just Jim Jones. If Jim Jones had died, they've got a layer of leadership that, this is a fully mature cult. Jim Jones dies, there's probably 12 people, 15 people ready to step in. That's not the end of it. 900 people aren't packing up and moving back to the United States. They're in on whatever the crazy paradise is.
Whatever the Kool-Aid drinking paradise is.
To the point where Parents. So there are 918 people died, as I've said. 1/3 of them are children. 1/3 of them are elderly. For most of the children, and in a lot of cases with the elderly, people are injecting with syringes the Kool-Aid into their mouths and watching them die in front of them. Parents are so committed to this cult that they are watching their children foam at the mouth and have what looks like a seizure for a minute or two before they die.
Jeez.
There is a woman in the capital of Guyana with her children who is like the local representative to the government of Guyana for the cult. She gets the call that the time is now to end it. She does not have cyanide with her. What does she do? She slashes the throats of her 2 children and then stabs herself in her heart. This is the level of commitment these people had.
Right.
Tim, why are you bringing this up?
Why are you bringing this up, Tim?
This cult started in 1955-ish in Indiana. Jim Jones started a Methodist church in downtown Indiana. And a lot of what Jim Jones and his church that he founded was behind was racial integration, because in Indiana they had a racial problem. They had a KKK problem. And they went out of their way to be a racially integrated church. He and his wife, I think, were the first couple in Indiana to adopt a black baby as a child.
Wow. That's crazy.
This church started as a civil rights oriented Christian church. Yeah. It was not a cult. At some point, I don't know, I don't remember if they got run out of Indiana or they decided to move, they moved to Oakland. There it continued. The People's Temple continued to grow. The People's Temple in Oakland became huge. They had mayors of Oakland and San Francisco showing up. In fact, 2 weeks before they all committed suicide, Harvey Milk, the mayor of San Francisco, and Huey, what's his name, the leader of the Black Panthers, had called down to the People's Temple in Guyana to tell them, we're all supporting you. We're all supporting you with the federal government going after you, and the CIA and the FBI. We're all supporting you in this persecution you're going through. They had prominent California and local politicians all behind them. This became a hotbed of racial integration in Oakland. And then it just continued to go off the rails until they decided to pick up, move to Guyana, and the rest is history. Why do I bring this up? I want to bring this up to take this back to where we started 4 episodes ago, where ultimately our world rests with Jesus. We live in a world where politics is. We live in a world of where we're some kind of democratic republic, which requires us to be involved.
Yep.
We're not citizens of Rome. We're being told what to do by our Caesar or a local prefect or whatever, local governor. We're supposed to be involved. We're supposed to be shaping in some way how this country works.
Yeah.
But we need to be very careful when we start mixing our politics and our Christianity. because all too often, it's not often, but all too often, it can turn into a cult. Yeah. And it become a distorted, toxic, grotesque version of the gospel. It can start out as something as white people loving black people, and somehow 30 years later, people committing suicide together.
Yeah.
And if you think I'm overstating it, I'm not. I'm sorry, brother and sister listening. I am not. I think that is a tale to be told. Because it's very quick to where even if it's not that dramatic, it's you're going to pry that gun from my cold, dead hand.
Right.
I'm never going to pay my tax, and if I have to go to prison, I'll go to prison. These are not things that Jesus wants us to be dying for.
No.
It's much bigger things and much smaller, more intimate things day to day with the people who matter. People we know and we don't know.
Yeah, and those are the bigger things, actually.
Yes.
In the grand scheme of things. They're not bigger in our eyes, but they are bigger in the eyes of the Lord. And not in a weird way.
And I fear that even though we're not all literally drinking the Kool-Aid, a lot of us have drunk the Kool-Aid when it comes to...
The Kool-Aid's already been drank. I mean,
yeah,
we
when it
bought
comes
into
to mixing
American
our politics and our
consumerism,
religion.
where it's just,
yeah,
this is how the world works, and this is whatever. But is that... And yet we call ourselves Christians, and it's okay to call yourself a Christian, but recognize that we're not adhering to what it is that God has planned for our lives. We're just sitting there and we're like, okay, well, that's just not how it works in a westernized civilization or whatever. That's just not how it works in America. And it's like, is it not how it works in America? Because actually in America, you have the freedom of choice. And I believe that a lot of you have the freedom to be able to choose what it is that you want to spend your money on, or whatever it is that you want to what you want to complain about. And the things that you want to complain about are the things that honestly, sometimes, in my opinion, I don't think Jesus would have ever had a problem with.
Yeah.
And it's so hard. Again, I talked about my experience last week where I talked about I have a background in Republican politics. That's when I took my test, that's where I landed. And I view that there are elements of republicanism and I remember, so here's my experience, is I had a grandfather who was openly being taxed over random bullshit in California for the machines that he owned, and it was breaking his business. My grandpa could not function, and so it became kind of this thing where it's like Democrats who are so against the billionaires or whatever would not allow for my grandfather to thrive in the state of California as a small business owner who's barely scraping by. They were sitting there and they were trying to tax the hell out of him for his business. And all those taxes were intended for large corporations.
Yeah. We didn't even get into that.
And yet those large corporations were able to avoid all of those taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were able to pay their way out of it. But who does the guy that you hired... Because that's what it is that so when they enforce that, it's not like that's... So who do they hire to be an inspector? So they hire some random person, or maybe somebody of importance or whatever, to be an inspector. And that person goes and does their job. They do. They inspect all of the places, and they sit there and they say, okay, these people are good, these people are bad. But the problem is they then find you, and then they then send it up to the court system. The problem with that is that, okay, then the court system sits there and finds all of those people, which is fair. But is it equitable? Because, and this is something that we struggle with and people on the left want all the time. They want an equitable representation when it comes to education, when it comes to certain policies. But when it comes to what my grandpa was working in agriculture, they don't give a damn about equitability. And so my grandpa is having to sit there and go broke as hell trying to fight these allegations against him for his law, and he loses the fight. But yet somebody who's doing the exact same thing that has millions of dollars is able to pay the lawyers to fight his case, and it gets postponed and it never actually goes to court, and they're able to settle out of there, and they don't lose hardly any money at all. But meanwhile, my grandfather, who's struggling to pay the 5 people that are on his staff in the ag business, is getting sued over, or not getting sued, but is having to pay the taxes and the fines for owning equipment that is polluting our air in California. Even though he's a very, very small operation in the grand scheme of what's going on in California. And that breaks my heart.
Yeah.
And I know that my grandpa's story is fairly similar to a lot of other small business owners across the state of California and across the country, where there is such a hard crackdown on supposedly that 1%. But the 1% is able to dodge all of those claims. And so who ends up getting the tax? Who ends up getting the last straw that breaks the camel's back? And I know this on an extremely personal level, to which I don't think other people understand. I worked with my grandpa for free, shaking trees for 18 hours a day, where I had an hour and a half commute to that place and I had an hour and a half commute back. So I shook trees for 18 hours. After an hour and a half drive there, and an hour and a half drive back, I slept for 4 hours.
All just to keep the family farm going.
All just to keep the family farm going. And he still wasn't able to break even. And so I look at that economic model where people are calling for change and demand. And yes, I'm the type of I believe that climate change is a real thing. I don't sit there and say that that emissions don't have an effect on our planet and the CO2 levels and all that kind of stuff. Yes, I get it 100%. But also at the same point, why are you coming after my grandfather? And this is a personal anecdote. Why are you coming after my grandfather whose footprint is not nearly the size of the majority of the rest of the country? And he, as an American citizen, the death of a salesman or the death of a business owner is kind of what it actually should be, believes that, well, he's supposed to pay his taxes and he's supposed to do what he's supposed to do for our country because that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And so he goes and he pays that and he gets ran out of business. And now my grandfather just collects that pyramid scheme that everybody's been talking about for years and years that won't exist in 20 years, 10 years. Social Security. Because it's the only thing that he has.
Yeah.
Because you took everything away from him. And especially in the state of California, you took everything away from him. And so, as somebody who has seen that happen and witnessed it firsthand, how do I recognize economics where I believe, and I do also believe on the flip side, that we should care for other people, we should acknowledge other people. But at the same time, I'm watching somebody get ran through by the government. So that way they could sit there and say, okay, well, we've checked this box off that we are a green environment. But meanwhile, our biggest priority is to make sure that somebody else is fed. Meanwhile, my grandpa is fucking starving and homeless. And why is he fucking starving and homeless? Well, it's because you decided to tax him over these things that he can't pay for. He had a job that was able to pay for all of his bills and all that kind of stuff, but you went there and you took that away from him. And you could sit there and say, like, that's okay, well, Colton, that's an extreme circumstance. That's happening to people across the country.
Yeah, it's not.
And how does that affect their children? How does that affect the people that they interact with on a regular basis? Tim talked about it, I think, 2 weeks ago when we first started this podcast. And he's like, dairymen hang themselves in our area.
Oh,
They
yeah.
sit there and they see the writing on the wall and they friggin' go and they throw themselves off of balconies and hang themselves.
Yeah, it was 2008 around,
Yeah.
2008, 2009, when the whole the economy was collapsing. Was a period where it hit milk farmers. There's a whole reason why farmers around our area, most of it's taxes. I'll go into this real quick. We have a bad tax policy in this country where we punish people who save, including businesses. If you're a small, like I've owned a small business my entire life. If I make a $50,000 profit as a business, I get taxed very heavily if I report that as a profit. So what do I do as a business? Oh, I give myself a bonus. Maybe I pay, and then I pay my business partner a profit, and then maybe I pay my employees a couple bonuses, and then hey, let's how's our computer equipment? Oh, it's a year or two old. All right, let's buy a new computer. So basically, you make the profit go away. That is an asinine way to run business. But when you're looking at the level of tax you're going to pay, you're enticed to do it because it's better off going in your pocket and having money in my pocket and buying new equipment than it is having what you should have, which is a nest egg or a rainy day fund, more appropriately, a rainy day fund where things go south. And so around here, farmers, they make a profit a couple years in a row. They spend it on, they redo the kitchen. They buy a new house. They maybe add on to the house. They buy new cars. They buy new equipment. And then the 2 bad years come around because they're dairymen. They provide milk to the milk producer, and milk prices have taken a dump for some reason. And so, God forbid, the milk producer take a hit. They pass it along to the dairymen, and all of a sudden, they got bills to pay and debt and all that because the tax system encouraged them not to have a rainy day fund. They have no rainy day fund, and they're now staring at a bill that requires them to sell the place, go out of business. So what do? They tell their wife they're going outside. They get in the pickup truck. They put a gun in their mouth and they kill themselves. That literally happened numerous times around 2008. And it's happened when we've had the raisins take a dump. It happened when, it's remarkable. We just had walnuts go under.
Walnuts went under. Almonds are.
We
no
had
longer a
walnuts. If you're
commodity.
listening to this, you don't know. We had a really, really rainy season, and it killed the walnuts. It was so wet that it just eviscerated the trees. Right? Was that what it was? Or there's walnut market took a dump. Anyway, They got rid of all the walnuts around here. I didn't hear anybody this time around like killing themselves. I think anybody who was still in walnuts owned a lot of property and had diversified. So, and to be fair, that's what a lot of farmers had to learn to do. They couldn't just be dairymen. They had to be farmers. They had to learn how to be dairymen and farm maybe something else like corn or cotton, or grow pistachios or almonds or something. And so that's what a lot of them did. But still, those who couldn't, who'd maybe overextended themselves, we shouldn't be praising a system where people are committing suicide because they can't pay their bills.
Yeah.
But we have a system, economic system, that's largely impacted by government policy that's encouraging that kind of stuff. So,
right.
Yeah. Stay focused on the kingdom, folks. We thank you for listening to this episode of the Go to Hell podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review. And if you don't like English Premier League soccer, you can go to hell.